No, I'm Not a Human is a simple game on the surface, but it uses its simplicity to immerse you into a world that can only be described as uncanny. The mechanics and story trap you inside of a single house, forcing you to experience the world and ongoing Armageddon as a helpless observer. But just because you're helpless, that doesn't mean you're useless, because you have shelter, something that has become highly coveted as most people ignored the biblical warning signs, and by the time the general population realized what was happening, it was too late to stop. Fortunately, you, the protagonist, are a bit of a loner, living on the outskirts of the city and keeping to yourself most of the time. Habits which accidentally allowed you to avoid the initial days of tragedy, but also kept you in the dark as to what exactly was going on. But that all changes on the first night, when you get a knock on the door and open it to find your neighbor, spouting about this growing heat wave and warning about strange people that have started to infiltrate homes just like yours. They disguise themselves as normal humans and only show their true monstrous intents when they outnumber the actual human residents inside. And if you thought your neighbor was just having a nervous breakdown, well, you realize that at least some of his warnings are legitimate when you wake up the next morning and see a local news station reporting on the ever-growing heat of the sun and the multiple reports of these strange people, which they're calling visitors. And the next night, your neighbor gives you one final warning. He knows that you're a loner, but he says that being alone is dangerous. Rumors report one visitor in particular has a habit of finding lone survivors and making sure they never see the light of the next day. But that's just a rumor, as is everything that he's told you. Even the news reports are operating mostly on hearsay. No one knows what's truly going on, so it's your job to decide. Do you want to trust the words and promises of strangers, or do you want to continue your solitary life despite the potential danger? On night 2, your daughter's neighbor comes to get him, and we get our first look at the bizarre designs of this world's characters. The daughter is, well, she's got a face that only a mother could love, but despite her odd appearance, it seems that she fits in just fine with the rest of this world, and as we'll soon see, she's far from the strangest stranger that we'll encounter. A few minutes after they leave, someone else knocks on your door, a man too tall to be seen in his entirety through the peephole. In my initial playthrough, I let him in even though he mentioned that he was kicked out of a bar due to some violent outbursts, and a few minutes later there's another knock. This time from a hunchbacked woman who seems down on her luck. I let her in as well since there was no indication that she was one of these rumored visitors. We don't have a lot of information to go off of for now, but there are 3 ways that we get small glimpses into the truth of the ongoing situations. The first is through news reports. Each day we'll hear from the reporters who tell us whatever information the experts have been able to uncover. The information is slow to unravel, but promises ways to guarantee that your residents are human. And on day 1, they mention that every visitor has perfect white teeth. It's a sign that could potentially point out a visitor, but as modern dentistry and dental habits are common in this world, it isn't a guarantee. So you'll have to use some deductive reasoning to determine if this sign will be of any help. I'll talk more about the signs as they come up in the following nights. Another glimpse at the world happens each night as you have an opportunity to look outside your 3 windows. Trying to look out during the day would blind you as the sun has grown in its intensity, so you can only see the world covered in a blue hue of night. The first few nights you don't see anything unexpected. Your neighbor's house in the distance, a starving dog, some drunkards, or teenagers hanging out in the nearby fields. The world seems to be getting along as it normally would, as not everyone has come to terms with the truth of the ending days. And the final way that we get information is through conversation. Each stranger has an in-depth personality and their own experiences with the outside world. The tall man, for instance, he mentioned that he was kicked out of a bar due to his violent outbursts, but if you follow up and ask him about his situation, he tells you that a mob of survivors began to go crazy inside of the bar. The sun exploding, the visitors, and an economic crisis had everyone on edge, and the tall man saw that the anger inside of the people was getting out of hand, and he was kicked out when he snapped and yelled at his fellow patrons about how they had all lost their humanity. He isn't actually violent. He's just frustrated and clearly afraid of the ever-deteriorating state of the world. But if you're still worried about him, then you can at least check his teeth. I need to test you. What do you want to check? Show me your teeth. I mean, those teeth are looking pretty good, right? Am I crazy? Maybe a little yellow. Pretty yellow? Okay. So piss off with your tests, I'm not a visitor. Oh. Okay. Following up with the hunchbacked woman is far less enlightening. She was working at a grocery store but lost her job. She seems normal, harmless even, until we ask her about her teeth. She begins to stammer and state that she had dental work done, but how? She's out of a job and clearly low on funds. She also mentions that she can't remember when she got this dentistry done, just that she did have it. And when we look at her teeth, they're perfect. It doesn't add up, so she must be a visitor. I pulled out my shotgun and put an end to her. Oh my god, I was chased out of my home, fired from my job, and now I'm gonna get run out of my own head. I'm scared of dying. Wait, can I have some kind of Ooh. That was cool. The next night, you'll get visited by 3 more strangers. For me, it was the twins Yin and Yang, a psychic lady with an upside-down smile, and a firefighter who had been caught in the afternoon sun, leaving him burnt and on the brink of death. I turned away the psychic because I don't mess with the ethereal, but I let the twins and the firefighter in, the latter of which offered me a paper that told of an organization called the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, who was working to set up a settlement for human survivors. Our first glance at a potential way out of our situation, which seems good, especially since looking out the windows today shows a shirtless, pale man standing outside your house, the sight of which fills the protagonist with fear. The next morning, the news reports that another sign of a visitor is dirt under their fingernails. The leading theory is that the visitors come from somewhere underground and force their way out through digging. I check the newcomers and find no dirty fingernails, so that lead is either a dead end or no one in the house is visitor. The next night, we get visited by that shirtless, pale man. Hi. I'm not letting you in. He asks if you're home alone, and if you tell him no, then his face drops, and he admits that he hears whispering coming from inside. But what if you really are alone here? If you've turned away every stranger and continued your life of solidarity, then night 3 still happens. The pale man still shows up at your doorstep, but this time, he doesn't hear the whispers. He knows that you're lying about not being alone, and he forces his way inside. No one knows what happened when the last visitor arrived. The house was left without occupants for quite some time. After your terrifying disappearance, everyone's avoiding the abandoned house. It's an abrupt and brutal ending, so it is important to let at least some people in, despite this desperate situation. There has to be some trust in order for everyone to survive. That night, I was also visited by this conspiracy theory guy who was a bit odd, but he seemed otherwise harmless, so I let him in. And I was also visited by this bald man who didn't want a place of shelter. Instead, he asked me to choose a verse of scripture, and reading it, he interprets that the coming days will be tough. But he also says that someone with a cat will be along soon, and it will be important to let them in if we want to ensure our survival. He leaves without asking to be let in, and a moment later we get another knock on the door. Anyone with a cat, you know I'm gonna let in. Okay. That ain't a cat.
That is a man.
This woman is carrying her dead husband and just needs a place to rest, and even though the man is not a cat, I let her in. Looking outside, we see that the officers of FEMA have arrived to our neighborhood. They're examining the place where the pale man was standing the night before, as well as the crisp bodies from the teenagers that we saw playing outside the day before. Things are rapidly falling apart. The next day, the news informs us that another sign of visitors is their red and bloodshot eyes. I test the newcomers first, checking the conspiracy theorists, but determine that he is human due to his messed up teeth. Then I check the exhausted woman, and her eyes are red and bloodshot. But that doesn't necessarily mean she's a visitor.
But it could just be from crying. Hold on, we can test her teeth.
Testing her teeth shows some imperfections, and looking at her fingernails shows no dirt. So I determined that her eyes were just bloodshot from crying, and take the risk in saying that she is a human. I also check a few of our other residents, but all signs point towards them all being human. So with nothing more to do, I call it a day and move on to the next night. This one starts as a member of FEMA comes to the door. They take away one of our residents and promise to come back with information on if they're human or not, as well as a way for us to move forward and find purchase in the survival colony that they're hoping to set up. He took away the conspiracy theory guy, which I was totally fine with. Next, we get visited by this manic guy in a wheelchair. He's had both of his legs amputated, and most of what he says is positive but weird. He doesn't seem harmful, so I let him in. And the next knock shows us someone familiar, although the circumstance of her visit is clearly desperate. The neighbor's daughter sobs through the peephole. She tells us that her dad was too kind. He let in everyone who asked, and it was too late when they discovered that he had let in far too many visitors. They killed him and burned the house to the ground. Of course, I let her in, and looking out the window, we can see the burning house of our neighbor. So her story does match up. Out the other windows, we see the entire FEMA group outside is now dead. Their bodies mangled and scattered, and the final window shows us that pale visitor now holding the head of one of the FEMA members. I was curious what would happen if I let in everyone who knocked, and it was instantly clear when there were visitors who had found their way inside. You wake up each morning to the smell of carnage, and checking the rooms you'll find garbage bags full of body parts where one of your human survivors once was. If there are no more human survivors, then the visitors come for you. But fortunately, I played it smart on that initial playthrough, so we won't be sharing the same fate as our neighbor. The next morning, we get our final news report and learn that visitors have hairless armpits. It's our last and definitely the least useful sign of a visitor, as most of the residents either claim they shave or have burned skin that makes it uncertain if there was hair there or not. Still, we do our due diligence and check the newcomers. The positive guy has some hairy pits and messed up teeth. He's definitely human. And the neighbor's daughter also has some messed up teeth, so I decide to trust her. And then, with all the investigating done, we move on to the final night. We're only visited by 2 people tonight, a man in an Among Us shirt and an old lady. Neither of them seemed too odd, so I let them both in. And then checking out the windows shows us a new group of FEMA members cleaning up the previous night's massacre. But we'll never know if we made the right choices, and we'll never know if we let in too many visitors, because right then, the game cuts to black.
Oh? What about the cat?
You can see more and more visitors on the street. The sun is heating the earth more and more. Death is on our doorstep. Nobody wants to die, but you need to survive. You want to live more than others. Or is it not a desire to live, but a fear of the unknown? What is there after death. We don't know, but maybe the visitors know something. Maybe we'll be able to survive this summer so that this fall we can try to discover the answer to the most terrible question. We just have to wait a little. Survive the summer heat. Don't let the visitors in. This is where the game ends, at least for now. No, I'm Not a Human is only a demo right now, but in its hour runtime, it immersed me so well that I just couldn't stop thinking about the eerie atmosphere and bizarre characters. It captures the terrifying wonder of the uncanny, and I can't wait to see where the full game takes the story. And I especially can't wait to finally save the cute little cat that we were promised was going to visit. But for now, this is all we've got of No, I'm Not a Human. It leaves us on a cliffhanger, just asking questions that have been left unanswered, just like the protagonist of the game. We don't know where we're going next. We don't know how we're going to survive, and all we can do is wait.
You will never know who knocks tomorrow.
Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video. As always, a huge thanks to my YouTube members for the extra support. Thank you to Nicole, Igor DaCosta, Reaver Approach, Shelly March, Kura Kula, Zed Ziggy, Super Suplex, Stu the Human, Bogmeyer Sandman, I Was Like Emilio, Jessica Martinez, Puke 97, April Farmentino, and Herr Libuaka. And that's all I've got for now, so be wary of strangers, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hello there.